Well, welcome everybody to the latest episode of the HR Tech Chat video podcast. And I am very happy to have with us today a very special guest, Robyn Torgius, who is Global Head of Payroll at IFS, based across the pond, as we say, here in New England and in England, and elsewhere close by. And she's also a member of our Global Executive Advisory Council here at 360 Insights. Welcome, Robyn.
Brent, lovely to see you again, and thanks for having me today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Really excited about today's topic. We're going to be talking about payroll and how payroll professionals can indeed think of themselves as a profession as opposed to a practice or as tacticians. And I'd love to just maybe if you could share with our audience just a little bit about what brought you to your role that you're in today, your background, what sort of qualifies you, because you are obviously qualified to speak on this topic, but just so give them a little bit of a background on you, if that would be possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like most people, I sort of fell into payroll rather than choosing payroll as a career. I had started my career in HR as an HR assistant, sort of moved my way up within the HR environment. And it was one of the HR managers at the time who processed our current payroll at the company. She was off sick. And it was like, oh, Robyn, do you mind filling in for her, helping her out? And I was like, of course. And it sort of started like that. And I got involved that way. Focused primarily on HR for a long time, even while I was doing the payroll role. And it was only when we immigrated to Ireland 7 years ago, obviously I wouldn't have had Irish HR experience. So I stuck more with payroll. And that was it really, just carried on from there. I've been fortunate in the roles that I have, and currently with IFS, I'm now the global head of payroll. We look after about 33 payrolls in 22 countries, so quite broad and interesting.
That's a lot of countries. And we might get into a little bit of global payroll as we talk today. But that's really interesting. Do you think a lot of people sort of fall into payroll? Do you think that's what happens with a lot of folks?
I think us older generations certainly do. I think payroll of recent has only really been acknowledged as a profession and as a career. Very interestingly, I was attending a seminar last week, and there must have been about 30 of us in the room. And the question was asked, how many of you fell into payroll? And all of us, barring one person, had put our hands up. And the speaker at the time said to the lady that hadn't put her hand up, did you actively choose payroll? And she was, yes. So literally out of this whole room, we had all fallen into payroll. I think nowadays it's, we're no longer just a back room function. People have realized the importance of payroll, the value that we actually have as a function and as a department within an industry and within the business. I think COVID highlighted that a lot for us. Suddenly where it was this invisible room with this person that just pressed a button that transferred your salary into your account each month. There was now this real need to know who payroll were, how did they function, how did they operate, what was needed from them in order to pay salaries, while we were suddenly all stuck at home, and what was our best way of working, and how did we cope. And I think that's where it highlighted that, there was more to just pressing a button and money suddenly appearing in your account at the end of the month.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. And, a lot of folks, as I tell people on the podcast, most of the guests, we have conversations before the actual podcast where we talk about what we want to talk about. And we also schedule green room time for the podcast. meeting, because just like any important late night talk show, we have green room time for our guests as well. But in any event, I recall from one of our past conversations this idea that, it's there's a dichotomy, or that's not the word. There's a dissonance that maybe we're finally leaving behind. But for a
Yeah.
long time, where, I mean, let's face it, payroll, that's probably, with few, there's some industries where the availability of raw material is just as important, if not more. But for the
Yeah.
most part, most industries, payroll is the most important thing for a company. It's you have to be able to pay your people. If you don't, if you make a
Absolutely.
mistake, yeah, you make a mistake just once, and forget it. All bets are off. A lot of people are going to look for a new job and all sorts of things. And so it's really odd that for the longest time, it was not, not so much an afterthought, but it was something that people, it was almost like a hot potato. Oh, you have to do payroll now, or okay, I'll do payroll or whatever. Why do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now we're in this new, thank goodness, we're in this new sort of paradigm where people are understanding that you need to be intentional about payroll.
And mindset. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's quite interesting because I think the education around payroll and the understanding of what payroll entails has certainly changed. I think it used to be just a case of the only time payroll was ever in focus was when something went wrong. Oh, I haven't been paid, and suddenly there's the uproar, and and then suddenly your name is known to an employee, to a manager or something, because now they've had to get hold of you. It's that old sort of saying, like, you were not seen until there was a problem. And I'm sure I've mentioned this to you previously. Payroll is always sort of, in my mind, it's and now I can't think of his name, Alfred to Batman. He's in the background there, but he's the one who's making sure that everything functions. And one of the things for me around the education piece of payroll that has recently sort of highlighted for me where the lack of understanding has come in is sort of payroll essentially is a backward function. People go on the middle of the month, oh, we just need to add this overtime, or somebody's bonus was missed, and you sort of say, well, sorry, we can't do it. And they go, but payday's still 2 weeks time, and it's not. Payday is your starting point, and you have to work backwards from that. So many days before payday, you have to have a bank file, and so many days before that, that's your reports and your approvals, and then so many days before that is your inputs. And I think that's been highlighted quite a bit now, that recently has come to light, that it's an actual function. It's not something that just happens.
yeah, that's interesting, and you're right. It's almost, it is kind of seen as something for the longest time. Oh, it just happens. It's just supposed to happen, and there's so what the analogy that I like to use is the power company, your electricity. Nobody goes, flips on the light switch, or makes themselves a cup of coffee with their Keurig in the morning and says, he calls up the power company and says, hey, thanks for sending us electricity this morning. It all went great.
Absolutely.
But the difference is, and when something goes wrong, when you lose the electricity, and as you recall, we had to reschedule this a couple of times because we lost electricity over where I live,
Yeah.
and then internet and all that stuff. Same thing with internet, I guess. You could look at it this way: is everybody's calling up right away. Hey, my internet is down. My power is down. And the same thing happens with payroll. The difference is, though, with a utility company, that is the product. So they are laser focused at all times on making sure that the product is delivered without
and keeping it running.
Yeah. Whereas,
Totally.
yeah, payroll is not the product that is directly relating in resulting in revenue for the employer. There's like an indirect correlation there.
Indirect, absolutely. And the other thing that people sort of tend to forget about it is that payroll itself within whatever business you're involved in, payroll is essentially to that business a service provider, you know. So it seems a bit weird to say that, but essentially we are providing a service to those employees, you know, end result being their paycheck. And you know, when that goes wrong, it's not just, oh, my pay's not in my account. It links to so many other things. And, you know, and payroll itself is an emotive topic in the sense that somebody's not being paid, you know, which leads to even more why it needs to be highlighted, the importance of payroll. You've got to get those inputs correct, because what you're putting in is what you're going to get out at the end of the day. And if you're producing a bad payroll, it's because you've been, you know, your inputs into payroll are not good.
Yeah. You mentioned that you're providing a service to employees. And I think that is a really, really important, that's such a great point. I'm glad you made it. And it occurred to me, and I wrote this down in the background because I'm always looking for headline ideas from these podcasts. And you gave me a really good one in this, you know, employees are customers with a twist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
It's kind of like owning a Ferrari not exactly, because you have to be uber rich to own a Ferrari.
I love my Ferrari, thanks.
I love mine too. It's right up in my Hot Wheels collection. But anyway,
yeah, I was stuck on the side.
but what I've heard about Ferrari ownership is that you have sort of a commitment as a Ferrari owner that, you know, you can't do certain things with your Ferrari. You have to take it to certain places to get it fixed. You're not allowed to sell it necessarily without Ferrari's permission and all these sorts of things. And so you have some commitments. There are some things you promise to do. You promise to Ferrari that you will do.
Yeah.
Don't, you get in trouble and maybe lose your Ferrari. And so it's not exact, but I was trying to think of something that's similar with
the same sort of principle. Absolutely. You know, because there's certain code that you, as a payroll professional, that you need to maintain. I mean, obviously the basics are honesty and being ethical and have integrity and the rest of it, which just goes without saying that that's what you should be doing in that environment. But I think it's more than that. I think you know, you need to have a little bit of forward thinking. You need to have a bit of anticipation. One of the things that I've noticed within payroll that's changed immensely is just the way we process payroll. You know, it used to be very much a manual function. You almost, to take it back to the old accounting, you know, the big old journal that you would have, that manually things were written down, and we progressed then to an Excel spreadsheet, you know, and it was gone are the days of your little brown envelope that your salary came in, you know. It was then a direct moved over to checks, and then from checks it's gone into your direct deposits. And, you know, I mean, now your pay slip used to be this paper thing that you received for or you signed for or something. I mean, employees are now able to log into a portal and retrieve their own pay slips. You know, there's that automation that's come into payroll now that wasn't there before. Previously, you were manually uploading into a payroll platform itself. Now you're uploading into platforms, you know. So it really has progressed and changed. And along with those changes, like you're saying, there's certain responsibilities that certainly remain with that, because that function itself, that service that you're providing needs to be of a certain standard, and certain, you know, qualities need to be maintained with it, for sure.
Yeah. And you can take the pay away from an employee that, you know, does not keep up their end of the bargain as an employee with, you know, with proper, you know, cadence of whatever auditable trail and all that.
Yeah.
But as long as that employee is keeping up with their side of the bargain, you are in, you know, just as Ferrari has to give them the Ferrari that they buy, you have to give them their payroll that they've earned, that they've earned. You know, something you said there around the manual aspect of it that's kind of falling away. It's not entirely solved for, but it, you know, the state of the art today is so much is light years ahead of, say, 20 years ago,
Absolutely.
10, maybe even 5 years ago. And it and it occurred to me that that might be, we're entering a new age of payroll where we don't need those same sort of administrative skills or proficiencies in humans. And now we're moving into an age where sort of a professionalism a career minded approach is in order for payroll. And also,
Absolutely.
yeah, and payroll actually is a great place for that career mindset now, where maybe it wasn't necessarily in the past.
Totally. And, sort of going back to, the old school way, the fact that you were sort of doing a calculation of some sort, or you used a program to do something, it was one person who sort of had control over the whole process, and they were involved start to finish, and now that you've certainly got this growth of, it's not only having to understand, payroll has changed so much in the respect of, employees' rights have changed. So the legislation around various payrolls, I mean, currently where I'm based, like I said, we've got 22 payrolls in 30 odd countries. That's a lot of legislation to be on top of, so your professional in each country, or who looks after each country, has to be on top of it. So it's not only just, how do I use this computer system, but am I staying on top of what I need to know to process this payroll? Just in the States alone, the taxes within the various, what do you call it, areas within the States, that's huge. There's so much more that needs to be applied to payroll, other than going, right, Brent earns X amount of money a month, he has a car allowance and a telephone allowance, and that's him sorted. Are there taxes applicable to the car allowance? Are there taxes applicable to the phone allowance? All these type of things are important, and it certainly needs to be more of a profession versus just a job now. It really has changed.
Yeah. What are some of the maybe non-technical or compliance related things that people can do with payroll now? I know there's a lot of stuff that you can, that for organizations that have a well-sorted payroll system, that they have access to data that is very valuable. What are some of the things that a payroll department can do today that maybe they wouldn't have been able to do, pragmatically or practically in the past?
Practically. I think, things like organizations that are now available for payroll. I know there's sort of like, each country will have its own. Ireland, for example, have IPAS, who anybody within Ireland and within the payroll profession could tap into to ask for information. There's the Global Payroll Association, that again, there's training available for professionals. People can literally pop an email or pick up a telephone and say, hey, I'm processing the US, I'm not sure of whatever the question is. We didn't have that availability to us previously, because it was literally just one person in a room processing a payroll for a company. Technology has certainly improved what we can access now, and it's instantaneous. If I'm not sure of something, I can literally Google what are the taxes wherever, or is benefit in kind applied to something, or and that wasn't available previously. And I think associations, and I think things like this podcast are amazing, because it's just getting out a little bit more information on a subject that people wouldn't have necessarily heard of previously.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's certainly a glossary of terms of art or jargon, if you will, specific to payroll that could probably fill many pages. Benefits in kind, for instance, that's one term that I heard you using. And that data that's readily available now, that's available sort of real time, the very current data on the
Yeah,
workforce, that's really that's of potentially strategic value to executive leadership at the organization, right?
absolutely. Definitely. And I think, you know, even taking it down a couple of levels, employees are now more aware of what their payroll should look like and what their pay slip should look like. I
Uh,
mean, there's certainly very many people still that get a pay slip and it's emailed, stuck into their folder, or, you know, they don't open it, they don't read it. But a lot more people now, because of the availability of information around payroll, they were able to understand their pay slip more. They were able to understand, no, hang on, there's a tax that's been applied, or, you know, so it's definitely beneficial for a lot more people now, you know, the employee, us as payroll professionals, the business as a whole, because I think they can understand what payroll is bringing towards the table for them as a, you know, as part of their setup and their structure. Yeah, the data is certainly a positive thing for us now.
yeah, yeah. What do you think is, if in terms of looking at payroll as a profession and sort of elevating it in the macro, like everybody, sort of lifting all
Yeah.
boats, right? What would be some key steps to take, as a group, like the payroll people, like if they were to sort of band together and say, hey, we want to elevate this, we want to sort of, elevate it to the level of a profession, sort of um, officially, this sort of,
Yeah, that acknowledgement.
yeah, and exactly, an acknowledgement. What would be some of the steps to take, do you think?
I think for me, the fundamentals would be the understanding of what payroll does. I think when you can understand what a payroll does, or what a payroll professional does on a daily basis, I think when we can do education around payroll, I think that would certainly elevate it a bit more. It's almost that a situation with those who know and those who don't, and it, you know, you want to sort of break that mold a little bit, because there's only certain areas that people generally know about payroll. It's amazing, you know, when you're out at a social function and someone says, oh, what do you do? And you go, oh, I'm global head of payroll. Wow, that's amazing. Like, what do you do? You know,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes our titles are a little exaggerated. But that in itself is just amazing. I mean, to have 30 countries
Yeah.
that you are now looking after, whereas previously, you know, we wouldn't have had that, because technology has certainly allowed us to do that. I can sit in Ireland, I'm having a conversation with you about a global system that I work with.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. So yeah, for me, I think one of the biggest things that we can do as professionals, and to get more professionals in and to make us more professional, is to continue to have the, you know, the education around it. I think the various associations that are now starting to form
Mhm.
also help a lot more, that people can join and band together and, you know, and just brainstorm,
Mhm.
almost like the conversation we're having now. How do you improve? What steps can we take? I think that's really important. One of the biggest things that I see now that's coming out a lot around payroll is the transformation of payroll. And I
Mhm.
think that means a lot of things to different people. But for me at the moment, how I'm seeing payroll transform is I'm seeing an automation of payroll.
Mhm.
And by that, I don't necessarily mean that there'll no longer be anybody involved in it, or there won't be the human aspect behind it, but it's certainly just making life easier. You know, like I was saying earlier, the direct pay slip, there's no more paper pay slips, that type of thing. You're uploading rather than inputting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think for me, that's it really.
Yeah. You mentioned automation. Couple things. First, automation. I've heard about some sort of, some newfangled concepts like autonomous payroll, and I've spoken with people who, like you and others, who frankly know more about payroll than I do, sort of at the granular level. What it takes to
Yeah.
make payroll happen, and because I've never processed a payroll, that is a bucket list item. But in any event. Um, I've heard about autonomous payroll, AI and machine learning,
Mm,
and and it's what I like to call the distant future of work. It's coming, but it's not going to be right away. We're talking about maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 years.
well, I hope it's when I'm done with payroll. The idea is amazing because, the reality is that payroll sort of has the 2 points of your month that are just stressful. It's your inputs time and it's your payday time, because inputs is when you've got this cutoff and there's this deadline and people are still trying to give you information, or you've received wrong information. Somebody sent you the wrong file and, oh, I forgot my overtime. And, it's just that chaos that goes around, and anybody in payroll will know what I'm talking about. And then it comes to the pay date time and, oh, my pay's wrong. And then suddenly you back, well, let's go, why? You didn't receive a bonus, or I didn't get that input from you, or, so there's those two sections. And the reality of being the autonomous payroll is those two are human sections of payroll. Those cannot be changed. The ideal payroll is that you have an HRIS system that has all your employee data in it, and you literally press a button and that sends over a file into your payroll system. Payroll's processed, sends your pay slips out and sends your payments out. There's still at the very start going to have to be some form of human intervention, because that has to be collated somehow. So you as a new joiner within a company still have to provide me somehow with various documents. I'm sure majority of them could be put directly into the HRS system, but there'll always be that human initiative at the start that has to function, and that human at the end that's going to have to explain to somebody the end of the. But it would be amazing if we did just press the button like everybody thinks we do.
Yeah, I know exactly, right? Like I love that. Like everybody thinks we do. I think that might be the quote. I'll just write it down. You're right. There's this term garbage in, garbage out, right? In computing, and even if we get to autonomous payroll, I don't know all the subtleties of it, but I've been hearing a little bit more about it. But it still seems to me, if you have the wrong information going in, or suboptimal, somehow erroneous, then you're going to, like you said, you'll need someone at the input stage and someone at the output stage. Actual people. And I doubt AI chatbots will suffice for most.
Not for an unhappy employee, certainly not. No, and I've lost my train of thought there. Sorry. AI would be amazing, and having that, function that ran smoothly, but it totally is. Whatever you're putting in is what you're going to produce.
Yeah. By the way, if I had a penny for every time I've lost my train of thought,
episode, be a rich man.
I'd have $10, which is a lot of pennies. In any event, just super quick, we're kind of running close to out of time, but just a little bit. You mentioned, your title again, Global Head of Payroll, and you are at IFS. You're in charge of global payroll, and any kind of sort of idiosyncrasies to global payroll? That might be the understatement of the year. I don't know. Anything you'd like to share with the audience around you being a payroll professional and how it applies to sort of global payroll?
Yeah, I think the name in itself can be misleading. It gives that sort of impression that, whoever it is, not necessarily, only me, nobody can know all the payrolls in the world. You know, and there's that perception that you should, and automatically somebody would be able to come to you and ask you a question, and you know, you would have to go back to them and say, well, actually, I'm not very clued up on the US payroll. Let me ask somebody. And there's almost a like, what? How do you not know that type of reaction? So I think that for me around global can be a little bit sort of, you know, confusing at times. I think it needs to be, you know, especially in my case, it's just that we have payrolls globally. It's certainly not me knowing all the payrolls around the globe, which would be amazing.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but you made a great point. You know, global payroll kind of connotes or gives off the impression that we're talking about one payroll that happens to be global, and that's not the case. It's just
not the case at all.
A bunch of payrolls across the globe. Maybe it should be head of payrolls across the globe or something like that.
Something along those, yeah, a little bit more sort of direct in relation to what you do. But yeah, it's certainly, it's individual payrolls within IFS that manage, that are all around the world, I suppose, is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and global payroll is incredibly complex, and maybe we could have you back as a guest to talk about global payroll sometime.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I think we'd be remiss not to introduce the other guest, your furry friend behind you.
Oh, Badgie.
Yeah.
He's quite content, lives the good life.
Yes, he does, as most cats do. We had
Clearly he's not interested in payroll, though.
What's the matter with him?
Yeah, focus.
Well, you know what, Robyn, it's been so wonderful to have you as a guest today on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Brent, thank you. I've really enjoyed myself.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Take care.
No hassles. Cheers.